All right. Well, hello and welcome everybody to this week's Impact Hour. We're so glad that you're here. We just have a few more of these left, so keep your eye out for our future calendar. But today, we're so pleased to have our alum, Heather Jones, here to speak on creativity and social work and using that as a writing tool. And one of the reasons we're so excited, that I'm so excited, is because Heather used to work in academic affairs, and I still remember her as a student taking diligent notes in our meetings and running into each other in the kitchen. So I'm so proud of her and happy that she's here to present for us today. Heather graduated in 2015, and she currently serves as the program director of literary arts for Austin Batcave. She actually started as a volunteer there before she even came to graduate school. So she's actually come full circle with her social work education. She organizes free creative writing workshops for kids and teens in Austin, Manor, and Del Valle. And she's passionate about developing workshops and teaching writing skills as a tool for healing and social change. Recently started a therapeutic journaling field internship for MSSW students. So not only did she start as a volunteer, come to social work, go through the program, now she's actually supervising our students. So I want to welcome everybody. I also want to welcome Miss Gloria Jones, who I believe is Heather's mom, and wish her a very happy Mother's Day. And if my child was doing this around Mother's Day, I would take total credit for it. So I just
Hi.
have to say that.
My mom is actually Susan Turner Jones, but hi,
Oh,
Gloria
Susan
Jones as
Turner
well.
Jones, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I'm glad there's
You
multiple
know,
Joneses here.
I always try to do like the element of surprise for the presenter, but sometimes it doesn't work out. So welcome, Susan. So without further ado, here is Heather.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's just wonderful to be here, and I love everything that you organize for the Donito Center. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
creating this opportunity. And yeah, I'm so excited to be here today to talk about a topic that I'm really passionate about, which is creativity in social work and using writing as a therapeutic tool.
Um,
Um,
Heather, I forgot to mention that we have the closed captioning. In case anybody would like to use closed captioning, we do have it available as an option. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, just private message either Sarah Hutchinson or Bella, and they'll get you set up with that.
yes, absolutely. So yeah, so as Jennifer said, my name is Heather. I'm the program director at Austin Batcave, and I use she, her pronouns. Um, and Austin Batcave is a local creative writing nonprofit. So we provide free writing workshops to kids ages 6 through 18. And we also provide adult workshops that help support our youth programs. So we teach all different types of writing, everything from poetry and fiction to journalism to screenwriting, and of course our therapeutic journaling program, which I'll be talking about. And once a year, we publish a book that's a collection of all of our student writing from the year. And this picture here is actually of a student sharing her writing before an audience at Book People in 2019. So yeah. So I wanted to start with kind of what is to me the most important slide in this workshop, and that is my personal community map or map of collaborations. When kind of deciding to present on this topic of using writing as a therapeutic tool, I was just thinking about all the mentors and teachers and friends and collaborators who have really influenced my work and kind of helped me develop as a writer and professional. So, you know, when I first started leading writing workshops, I was working with my dear friend and teaching partner, Louise Hanks, who helped develop a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, and also learned a lot from my mother, Susan Turner Jones, who's also a writer and educator. They're in the bottom left there. And then when I went to social work school, I was lucky to meet incredible professors who taught me so much about ethics and restorative justice and mental health care. And then when I came to Austin Batcave, Ollie Hayter and Tammy Beard were my first coworkers there who really supported me in developing this program. And then Brooke Bernard was our first BSW volunteer who participated in our therapeutic writing workshop at Giddings State School, which is a detention facility an hour from Austin. And then over here on the top left is the current staff of Austin Batcave. Just an incredible group of people, writers Richard Santos and Emily Chama, and then my amazing program team, Leticia Orieta and Xochitl Gonzalez. Leticia is an amazing leader in the writing community. She also leads a nonprofit called Barrio Writers, and also does therapeutic writing with a workshop called Reconnecting to the Body. And Xochitl Gonzalez has developed a lot of our workshops that teach writing as a tool for activism and advocacy, which I'll talk about later in the workshop. And then Avery Nelson was our first MSSW social work intern who developed a curriculum around therapeutic journaling. So just really important to me to share all these people and to kind of emphasize to any social work students who are here, like, find the people who see you for what you can offer and who support you and make you feel confident and talk about ideas that make you excited, because that's truly what helped me get to where I am at this point in my career. And I wanted to dedicate this talk to Mitch Sadolsky, who passed away this year and was my clinical supervisor and just a true kind of mentor and inspiration to me. Mitch, I'm thinking about you, and just this talk is dedicated to you today. Thank you for all that you taught to me. All right, so a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk a little bit about my own path to writing and social work and my career, and talk just about kind of creativity and social work in general. We're going to dive into therapeutic journaling and talk about some different techniques and tools that allow journaling to be a self-healing tool. I'm going to talk a little bit about restorative practices and writing groups and how they can really complement each other, and a little bit about how writing can be a tool for social change. And then we'll end out with a quick kind of sample writing activity that you could possibly use with students or clients. All right, so to start with, what is writing to me? I have always been someone who has a lot of strong, extreme and intense emotions. From when I was a little kid, I, would feel really envious of my younger sister. I had a lot of like different fears of spiders and planes. I could get really angry sometimes. And my mom, I remember when I was very young, was just like, you need to journal, start writing this stuff down. And so from like first grade, I actually started writing in journals whenever I was feeling really emotional or intense. And it's really just stuck with me my whole life. I have journals just from every year of my life. This one here is my first journal from when I was 12 years old and that I used throughout high school. And as somebody who's kind of experienced anxiety and depression throughout my life, it's really been my way of kind of healing myself. Also my way of understanding and kind of talking to myself. And, it's also helped me develop my own writing, which is kind of my personal art form, like the thing that I can do that's truly beautiful. And the way that I interact with my own truth. And also how I find my people. A lot of my closest friends are writers. So writing to me just kind of touches a lot of different elements of my life and is still a tool that I use whenever I'm having a difficult time or need to kind of figure something out that's just kind of all stuck up in my head. I just put it out on a page. So, because I've always loved writing, I went to college and studied comparative literature, studied books, which was just the thing that I was most passionate about. And when I first graduated from college, I worked in publishing, editing books, but that wasn't really quite enough. I wanted to do more. I wanted to be more involved with the community. So I quit that job and was waitressing, and then started volunteering at Austin Batcave with Louise, who I mentioned earlier. And we started teaching a poetry and songwriting workshop at a local juvenile detention facility. And this was a really impactful experience for me because I, one, kind of witnessed the power of what a writing group could be and how it could be just this amazing vehicle for storytelling and empathy and self-discovery and healing. And I also witnessed a lot of problems within the criminal justice system. And I really wanted to get involved in fixing those problems and preventing youth from ever being incarcerated. So that led me to go to the School of Social Work, where I focused on criminal justice reform and restorative justice. So then I graduated and I ended up working in school-based mental health services for a while and doing a lot of crisis support, working with a lot of students who were dealing with depression and anxiety. And I absolutely loved that work and learned a lot. And it was also very hard as someone who also deals with those things. And what I kind of noticed while I was doing that work was that one of the things that really helped a lot of my students was creativity, like was their passion that they had, whether it was theater or music or just writing or talking about music with friends or painting. Like their creative art was a lot of times what sustained them and got them through hard times. And so I kind of started thinking like, I want to keep doing mental health work, but I want to do that creative thing that is like joyful for students. I want to work somewhere where students are coming and they're healing through something that they love to do. So then when Austin Batcave was hiring for a program director, I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. Like the fusion of my two interests, writing and mental health. And so I ended up back at Batcave, and it's a very cool full circle moment for me. So, so that kind of leads me to talk a little bit about creativity and social work. And, you know, when it really kind of comes down to it, creativity and art are modes of self-expression and communication. And they're just very valuable alternatives to verbal communication, which is just not always the best tool for every client and sometimes not even possible with every client. I worked with a student with selective mutism when I was doing school-based mental health, and we just, you know, focused completely on writing and other art forms. Because verbal communication wasn't an option. But even for people who it is an option for, it's not always the most effective tool. So creativity can be used in micro practice with groups and individuals. It can be great for trust building and relationship building. And then it can also be used in macro practice. It can be an amazing community organizing tool. It can be, you know, used as a protest tool and a great way to bring awareness to systemic issues and to advance social justice movements. All right, so why writing? Why is that the art form that I choose to focus on? There's many reasons, and I shared them before talking about my own journey to writing, but one great thing about writing is that it's a very accessible and affordable form of art and expression. You really don't need anything besides a piece of paper and a pencil, and you can transport these materials very easily. So even in spaces like detention facilities and treatment centers, you can write even if you're not allowed to bring other supplies in. It's also a really amazing vehicle for communication and storytelling. And there's just so many different ways to write. It connects to a lot of different art forms. Like you can write lyrics for music, you can write a screenplay or a play that can communicate something important to you. So it's just a very diverse form of art. And it's always been the one that I've found to work very well with social work practice. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about the healing power of writing, which has been researched by one of UT's own professors, James W. Pennebaker. And he has done some incredible research and experiments that have actually shown that expressive writing can improve physical and mental health. So expressive writing is actually a very specific technique that's different from journaling or creative writing. What expressive writing involves is writing specifically about a very difficult, traumatic or upsetting experience for 15 to 20 minutes a day for 3 or 4 days in a row. And what it's really focused on is disclosing kind of your deepest thoughts and feelings about that event that you might otherwise be keeping secret and not sharing with anyone. And again, what research has found is that if people do this, it can actually enhance immune function by reducing the biological changes that are associated with stress. So expressive writing has actually been used in a variety of settings to treat anxiety, depression, PTSD, as well as chronic health issues. So expressive writing is not what we do at Austin Batcave because it's not really conducive to the settings that we use to work with youth. But it is just a really interesting kind of research and that shows how powerful writing can be. And I really recommend reading more about expressive writing. It's fascinating to read the studies about all the ways that they've proven that it actually improves physical and mental health. So diving into therapeutic journaling, my favorite topic. So therapeutic journaling is very similar to journaling, and journaling at its core is self-expression and kind of dialoguing with yourself through writing. And so therapeutic journaling is very similar, but what it is that's different is using kind of exercises, prompts, and techniques that can kind of aid in self-exploration and healing and creative problem solving. And therapeutic journaling can also take place alone, or it can take place in a safe communal space like a support group or a writing group, where you can write and then actually share what you write with others. And what I think is kind of most powerful about therapeutic journaling is that it's something that you can do on your own. You truly are engaging in self-healing and kind of accessing inner knowledge and wisdom that can really sustain you and that you can take with you throughout your entire life. So I wanted to kind of share this quote as we begin talking about therapeutic journaling. The diary is the only form of writing that encourages total freedom of expression. For some people, learning to be free in their diaries is a way of learning to be free with themselves. And I thought this quote is very important because what's so unique about journaling is that it is a private art. You ultimately don't have to share it with anyone if you don't want to. And for so many of us who we kind of try and be so many things throughout our life for other people, and often, have to kind of put on masks to get through life, the diary is the place where you can kind of take all of that out and just be yourself. It's truly only for you. And that's really how kind of journaling has been for me. And it can be such a beautiful gift to give to youth, to teenagers as they're kind of trying to find out who they are. And really clients of any age, that kind of experience of freedom of expression and getting to kind of discover who you are. I also love this quote from Walt Whitman. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. This is another thing I kind of love about journaling is like, you can contradict yourself. You can be unfair. You can be emotional. You can be angry. Like everything is accepted in a journal, again, because it is just for you. And it, to me, has been the place that I've found that really can contain and can accept all the multitudes of who I am. So what happens when you journal? A big part of journaling is catharsis, just the actual release of the raw emotions. Just writing like, I'm so angry, or writing about something that you're feeling, and just kind of actually the physical act of writing it down, sometimes like scribbling across the page, and just getting what's in your head out, externalizing it, getting it on a piece of paper. Journaling also leads to reflection, kind of looking at yourself, observing yourself, and actually getting a chance to kind of think through behaviors and moments in your life that you want to examine. Can lead to amazing moments of clarity and insight. It can be very self-healing as you kind of process and even transform pain into something more positive. And as I was mentioning, it can also be a way to tap into your creativity, and to discover parts of yourself and your personality that maybe you've never felt safe to let out in other contexts. So there's a lot of different journaling techniques that can kind of aid in the therapeutic process of writing. And so I'm going to talk through a few of these. So one really amazing technique that probably many of you might be familiar with is free writing. And free writing is just stream of consciousness writing. It's kind of literally just writing whatever is present with you in the moment and whatever comes to your mind. It's also been called automatic writing, and it was practiced by the surrealists in the 1920s and 30s, or morning pages, if you've read The Artist's Way. But this can be a great activity to do with clients. I love doing this with teens and combining it with music. So we might listen to a 5-minute song and I'll say, okay, as long as this song is playing, you just want to not even take your pen off the page and just write. And when you do this, it's really interesting. You might, kind of start somewhat superficially and then eventually kind of find more deep currents of what's really present with you or what's filling up your heart or your mind on that day. Another great technique is list making, which can be a great entry point to writing if someone's not quite yet comfortable filling up a whole page. Sometimes writing a list of perhaps things you're afraid of or things that make you feel alive, things you're grateful for, beliefs you hold, maybe beliefs you no longer hold. It can be a really wonderful way to kind of start to tap into yourself. And sometimes lists can actually be really artful, and it can even kind of end up being somewhat like poems. Dialoguing is another really interesting journaling technique, where you actually write an imaginary dialogue to either parts of yourself, like an element of your personality. Like I could maybe write a dialogue with my critical voice, who I don't always love. You could maybe write to a certain part of your body, or maybe to a concept or a place, and actually just kind of imagine what the two would say to each other. And it can kind of be an interesting way to kind of resolve a problem or kind of figure out something that you haven't been able to figure out. And then of course, letter writing. Letter writing is such a beautiful journaling technique. The letters are almost never sent. They're unsent letters, but writing to people who you might have a lot of feelings that you maybe don't want to say, but you need to kind of work through, writing to people who maybe have passed away, writing to your future self or perhaps the past child self. Yeah, there's really endless audiences for letters that you could write. So these are some wonderful techniques to try using in groups or with individual clients. So we're going to pause for a quick moment and we're going to do our own writing activity. So if you have a cell phone you can write with or a piece of paper or pen, just maybe grab something really quick. And what I'm going to ask you to do is just take the next 60 seconds. I'm going to set a timer to just write a list of things that you are hungry for. And you'll just repeat that phrase each time. I'm hungry for, I'll just give a few examples. I'm hungry for French fries, right? It could be a food. I'm hungry for time with my family. Maybe you haven't seen your family for a while. I'm hungry for justice. You can kind of interpret I'm hungry for whatever in whatever way you want, whether it be food or something else that you're craving or missing or needing in your life. So again, we're going to just take quick 60 seconds to write down as many things as you can of things you're hungry for. And then we're going to come back to this later in the presentation. All right, ready, go. All right, you've got 10 more seconds. And don't worry, you won't have to share this with anyone. All right. So go ahead and stop writing and just hold on to your list. This is just for you, but we'll come back to it in a little bit. All right. So now kind of having talked a little bit about therapeutic journaling, I'm going to talk about what workshops look like at Austin Batcave. So we do therapeutic writing workshops that are led by social work interns or professional writers who have experience in journaling. These are typically year-long closed writing groups for either middle school or high school students. And we often try and work with students who are in detention facilities. And we're really trying to teach writing as a tool for coping with stress. while also using the group and the kind of sharing that comes out of the group as a space to kind of build relationships between the students and peers who are in that group. And since we're using writing, but what's kind of different about these therapeutic groups is that students are writing and they're also having the opportunity to share and kind of getting all the benefits that come of not only releasing feelings, but then if they choose to share, getting to kind of experience empathy and connection through connecting with others in the group. And so the format that we've used for these groups incorporates restorative practices. So some of you may be familiar with restorative practices or may have taken the restorative justice class at the School of Social Work, which I highly recommend with Dr. Armour. But restorative practices are processes for community building and conflict reparation, which have evolved out of Indigenous healing practices. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of techniques that we use in our groups. So we typically kind of use the format of a restorative community building circle. And these circles always have openings and closings that kind of set the tone and kind of create the container for the space that is the writing group, which is different from the rest of the day, right? It's a safe space where we're really tapping into ourselves and into each other. So an opening or a closing could be a quote, a song, a poem, a piece of music, anything that might be inspired by or connected to the topic that you'll be discussing or writing about that day. And again, it kind of marks the beginning of the group and the ending of the group. There's also always shared agreements and community guidelines. In restorative circles, there's a focus on speaking from the heart and listening from the heart, and also sharing values. So we usually talk about the values of all the students who are in the room and kind of agree upon a shared set of values that we use to guide our time and our behavior together. What's particularly unique in restorative practices is a talking piece, which is a symbolic item that regulates dialogue and is passed around the circle. And whoever has the talking piece has the floor. No one else is talking except for that person. And then every time the talking piece is passed around the circle, that's called a circle round. And what's really important about the talking piece going around the circle is that it gives each person an opportunity to share if they would like. However, it is always okay to pass. But what it does that's kind of different from an average group is it makes it so that people don't have to kind of fight to participate or fight to be heard. They don't have to take that risk of raising their hand. Like the talking piece will come to them. Everybody will have an opportunity to be heard if they would like to be heard, but also they can participate just by being there. And so these techniques, I think, and these practices are just really, really helpful for leading a writing group. And you can read a lot more about restorative circles and restorative practices. And I have some resources at the end that I'll recommend for that. So core values of a therapeutic writing circle, one is choice. Again, like I said, students always have the option whether to share or not. And what's kind of wonderful about a writing group is that if you kind of pose a writing prompt or a writing activity to students, as long as they're writing, they're participating. They don't have to share out loud. Maybe they just want to keep it private to them, but they're doing everything they need to do just by writing down what we're working on and doing the journal entry on their own. So we always want to give students choice, especially if they may have previous trauma, so that they don't feel put on the spot or like they have to share if they're not ready. Confidentiality is also a big piece, keeping everything private that's shared in the group. Creating a sense of belonging where every student feels valued for what they bring. And of course, empathy, which kind of comes from sharing writing and students kind of discovering commonalities that they might not have realized they had otherwise. One really wonderful kind of process I love to do in restorative writing groups is to have when a student does share a piece of writing, to then pass the talking piece around and have every student say one line or one word that stood out to them from that student's writing or that really impacted them. And it can be very powerful to hear, the talking piece go around and have 10 students just say a line or a word, like you always see kind of the student writer who's being appreciated, really like kind of beaming and feeling really proud in those moments. And a lot of times everyone shares the same word or line. And so there's this really kind of powerful effect of hearing everybody kind of say that back to you. So this is just a wonderful quote from one of the therapeutic journaling groups that our MSSW intern Avery Nelson led at Lively Middle School before the pandemic. She said, "This group is like a magnet taking away my bad feelings." And I thought that was just so, such a perfect kind of example of what writing can do, how it can kind of just be this process of where you, again, take what's in your heart and your head, maybe what's weighing you down, and you just put it on the page and it kind of takes that away or helps it feel better. So the last thing I'm going to talk about before getting into kind of sample writing activity is writing as a tool for kind of macro social work practice or activism and advocacy. And I wanted to start with this quote from James Baldwin. "You write in order to change the world, knowing perfectly well that you probably can't, but knowing that literature is indispensable to the world. The world changes according to the way people see it. And if you alter, even by a millimeter, the way a person looks or people look at reality, then you can change it." And I just think that's, such a powerful quote because truly writing is this thing that allows us to share our stories with other people and touch other people and possibly even change their opinions through sharing those stories or through sharing persuasive ideas and arguments that we might have. And we see that all the time as people share incredible works of literature about social justice issues that have then gone on to affect policy and to affect real change in our society. So, Austin Batcave kind of over the last few years has really tried to focus on developing ways to teach writing as a form of activism. So one thing we've done has been speech writing. So teaching students how to write a kind of 2 to 3 minute short speech that they could potentially share at City Hall or state legislature, or even just share on Instagram Live. We've done op-ed writing, which teaches youth how to write an opinion article about a social issue that they're passionate about. We've had students write about all different types of issues from immigration to abortion to restorative justice or mental health care in schools. We've also done workshops on writing for social media, learning how to write powerful tweets or Instagram posts that, in this day and age are one of the main ways that people are learning about social justice issues and communicating about things that about action that needs to happen in our community. We've done advocacy writing, writing to people in positions of power, learning that's again kind of goes back to letter writing. Xochitl, who I mentioned earlier, is currently leading a workshop in Del Valle called Comiendo Comunidad, which is about writing about food advocacy and food justice. And students are kind of writing about food in their community and ways to advocate for more different types of like grocery stores and community gardens and things that they would like to see happen in their community in the next few years. Spoken word and slam poetry are also incredible vehicles for sharing about social justice issues and sharing stories. And then last but not least, speculative fiction, which kind of allows us to imagine new and different futures that are better than what we have right now, which is, I think, especially important because a lot of times, we need a vision before we can truly change. And sometimes it's really hard to imagine life without some of the institutions we have now. Like what would society be like without prisons? Well, speculative fiction could write about that, help us imagine like a pathway forward and a more just future and help us then see it so we can achieve it. I really recommend looking into kind of social justice oriented speculative fiction if you have time. All right, so we're gonna kind of culminate with a sample, the kind of going back to the sample writing activity that we did, I'm hungry for. So this is a writing exercise that originally I learned about from my mom when she was teaching writing at a really wonderful nonprofit called Family in Los Angeles. And as you kind of already experienced, we did the beginning of that activity where you write a list of things that you're hungry for, thinking about food items and also non-food items, right? Starting to imagine what are things that you're kind of craving or missing or desiring in your life right now. So once students have kind of made a list, as you do, we encourage them to kind of look through their list, share them out loud with others if they feel inclined, and then to choose an item from the list that they'd like to write about in more depth. So if you look at your own list, maybe one of the things that you wrote stands out to you. So then on a new piece of paper, you would start with that one item. So, you know, for me, one of the things I wrote is I'm hungry for peace of mind. I have a list of 5 other things, but I would just pick that one and then just start to expand on that idea. When's the last time I had peace of mind? What does it look like or feel like? Why does it stand out among all the things that I miss or that I'm hungry for? Who else wants peace of mind? And then once you've kind of meditated on that item, you can write a poem, a song, a short paragraph, a list, just 1 or 2 sentences. You could do a free write. And just kind of see what comes. And again, this is kind of a great entry point to writing, especially when students are a little bit uncomfortable with writing. So we often do this as one of the first few groups, especially when we're working in detention facilities where students don't have access to all the things in their life that they love. So I'm going to show you an example of a piece of student writing from Giddings State School in the workshops that Avery led. So on the left, you can see the student started with a list, just as you did. I'm hungry for money. I'm hungry for respect. I'm hungry for Oreos. I'm hungry for family. I'm hungry for loyalty and a better lifestyle. I'm hungry for knowledge. And so then the student chose to focus on I'm hungry for family. And on the right, you can see the kind of short paragraph that he wrote expanding on that one piece that he chose to focus on. I'm hungry for family. It felt like love. I'm hungry for love because I feel special when I'm with my brother and sister, because without them, I have nothing. When I see my family, my heart feels good to know I have loved ones out there. The last time I saw them was 2 weeks ago when I had my family session. It stands out on my list because family is the only one who got your back through thick and thin. So I encourage you, perhaps after this workshop is over, to take a look at your list and maybe just spend 5 to 10 minutes just writing about whatever on your list stood out to you most, and see what comes of it, see how you feel after. And again, I think this is a great kind of first writing activity to do with students when they're just kind of learning about and getting used to writing for the first time. All right, so having shared all of this today, I think there's a lot of really wonderful people here who are writers and social workers, and I really encourage you to get involved. If you would like to do this work or just be part of this work with us, you can volunteer at Austin Batcave. We're always looking for people to lead writing workshops with youth. You can help us build curriculum if you are passionate about journaling and have ideas for writing activities. I invite you to volunteer with us and help us do that. You can research. As I shared earlier, there's been a lot of research done on expressive writing, not as much on therapeutic journaling groups. So we're always looking for grad students who want to do research projects with us. And you can write, do your own writing. Come join Austin Batcave's writing nights. We have a Monday night writing group that you can be part of and just come and write in community with other people. Or take one of our adult workshops and hone your own writing craft and support ABC's youth workshops. So I hope to see some of you around. I also wanted to just kind of quickly share a list of resources, and perhaps I can share this presentation with Jennifer afterwards. Or I think it's recorded so you can have access to the slide, but on the left here are just a number of wonderful books that talk about journaling and expressive writing and restorative practices so that you can learn more about all these topics. This is kind of the list that I give to interns when they start with Austin Batcave. I'm just like, here are all these books, read them. And then on the right are just some incredible nonprofits that have inspired me from the outset of my career. Family and Street Poets in Los Angeles, Free Write Jail Arts in Chicago, Big Thought in Dallas. This is just, you should look up all of these organizations if you're interested in writing and using writing with youth. They have incredible anthologies available on their website too, where you can read writing by youth as well. All right, so I'm going to save the last 15 minutes or so for questions. Yeah, or comments, anything, any expertise you have to share as well. And then if for any reason there aren't questions, I can also always dive into a few other things.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Absolutely. Oops.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you, Jennifer. And yeah, if you do have any questions, I guess go ahead and drop them into the chat, and or feel free to just speak out loud.
We do have a question. What were the strongest skills, aside from the writing, that you feel are important for this type of work?
The strongest kind of skills for social workers or for the students?
For social workers who would like to do this type of work.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think too, I would say that you really don't have to be necessarily like a professional writer to do this type of work. Anyone who journals or kind of even starts journaling can do this. Just kind of having that. You could perhaps even take one of these books that I've recommended, like the New Diary, and start trying some of those exercises yourself. And then once you feel confident and familiar with them, you could start doing them with your clients. I think, getting some experience with restorative circles and leading groups in that type of format can be really helpful, because it just really is a great way to kind of create a safe space and container for sharing. Getting used to using like a talking piece to kind of regulate dialogue just really helps with giving, especially working with youth, them, confidence to kind of share and feel like they're able to kind of take a risk and be vulnerable and kind of get deeper. As far as other skills, yeah, I think, a lot of just kind of the general practice skills that we talk about so often, just like building trust, building relationships with students. Again, like for people to be able to share, they just really need to feel safe and heard, and yeah, and just getting more comfortable with your own creativity so that you're able to then support others in sharing theirs as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We do have one from the chat as well. Do you have any recommendations for determining what types of issues clients are ready to delve into while journaling on their own, i.e. what the client is able to handle, potential for severe distress, deregulation beyond their ability to cope, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I think, when working with youth in particular, we really take it slow. So, as I mentioned, a lot of our groups are year-long groups. And the first semester, which is about like 10 sessions, will really kind of focus more on doing kind of entry-level writing activities, such as like a brain dump or free writing, learning kind of about emotions. So like using things like a mood chart or an emotional wheel, where students are kind of, just kind of getting familiar with the language of all the many emotions that are out there and starting to kind of write about some of them. But we're not kind of delving into writing about trauma right away. Certainly that might come up. You might have a student who who kind of wants to just get it all out there right away. And I think in that case, you know, and in some writing groups, you might be kind of reading what students write after the group. There's certainly some settings where that's required, especially working with youth. But kind of, you know, like, you know, I think a really good guideline to tell clients or students is if something is starting to really upset you or it feels uncomfortable to write about, just, you know, kind of take a pause and maybe you're not like kind of listen to yourself. And if you're not quite ready to go there yet, maybe it's, you know, wait before really writing about something that's kind of triggering you. And I think kind of having a conversation about that, teaching youth to kind of identify what emotions feel safe and what doesn't, you know, what they feel ready for or not is a really good kind of precursor to doing some of this work. But I think starting with activities that can be like more positive, like lists about things you're grateful for, writing kindness letters, which was one activity we did where we kind of, you know, teach students how powerful it is to make other people feel good. And writing kind of like a letter of appreciation to someone else in the group, someone at their school, and then delivering it, kind of get them familiar with writing, also in your group. So you're familiar with their background and what's going on with each person before you kind of delve into activities that bring heavier topics.
Thank you. I think that is
I'm
also,
getting a message that my internet connection.
it's a little unstable, but we can still hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Is it better now at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. What I was going to say is I think that, you know, some of the things that you just discussed are, you know, reasons why social workers would be really good in this position because we're trained to spot some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like, you know, that, you know, the ability to use those skills and this as a therapeutic tool, but be ready in case it, you know, starts trauma or something like that starts to evolve from the writing. Um, how can we save spaces for BIPOC students in a therapeutic writing relationship without it treating on trauma work that might be harmful? Treating,
Um,
Sarah, do you have that question? I think I might have misread it.
I think it was treading on.
Oh, treading on.
Yeah.
Okay. So
okay.
it's without treading on trauma work that might be harmful.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And one of the books that I referenced actually talks specifically about journaling for BIPOC students or clients, and just, you know, and how journaling can be a place to process, you know, like a lot of the like difficult experiences and occurrences that are happening in our society right now with racism, with police brutality. Um, but I think, you know, I think one, it would be really important to have an instructor doing that work who could was representing the identities of the students served and could kind of speak to and connect with the issues that students might be feeling. You know, I think this kind of goes back to the last question too, like, and it kind of goes back to the value of choice. Like we, you know, doing journaling doesn't kind of mean that you have to dive into the kind of most painful or traumatic topics. And again, like kind of that's what expressive writing is doing, but that's not necessarily what Batcave is doing in our groups. But so kind of, you know, really kind of teaching students to use the journal as a self-healing tool and kind of seeing what do students need at the moment. Maybe what they need in the moment is kind of a space where they can kind of give themselves care and self-love through the journal. And there's a lot of activities that you could do around that. Maybe students eventually do then want to process feelings that could be related to more difficult topics or trauma, but that's never like the only thing to do with journaling or like not required, if that makes sense. And so I think kind of, again, creating like a curriculum where you're really like easing into questions that might be deeper, but I think some people who have written about journals have said it can sometimes be a naturally self-regulatory tool, because you kind of, you're writing, but if you're starting to feel upset, you can easily like stop, and kind of then process what it felt like through writing as well. So I hope that answers that question. But I think always offering students choice is really crucial when there's trauma in the room, so that students never feel forced to do any activity. There's always kind of like tiered levels that they could do. Maybe you could answer this question, or if you want, you could just do a list, or you could answer this question instead, making sure there's options so that students can do what they feel comfortable with.
Thank you. Do you, this is more of a practical question. Do you ever have journal writers who are afraid that others might find their journals, so it might keep them from writing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that was actually in our recent workshop that we did with Manor High School. We talked a lot about this because yeah, right. It is terrifying to think that someone could find your journal. And technology has actually kind of created some new ways that you can journal, that can maybe feel even safer. One idea we talked about is actually making an email account that you use to journal, like a Gmail account, that's really heavily password protected. And you just write all of your journal entries in email drafts in that email account that nobody can log into. So
Wow,
nobody can
that's
ever find
great.
it. There's actually journaling websites too, like things kind of similar to what Live Journal was or still is, where you can kind of create a password and journal online. But yeah, you can also kind of disguise your journal, or make it kind of in a math notebook. That's something we tell students too. But yeah, or journal in the notes section of your phone. There's kind of a lot of different ways you can do it if you don't feel like comfortable having a physical journal that maybe somebody like a sibling could find in your house, or that someone else, or even just, someone at school could find. So yeah, I hope that answers that question
Yeah.
a little bit. And I see another question in the chat. Have you associated with other social workers that work with creativity? For instance, I'm a graduate student in social work, wanting to become an art therapist. Have you combined writing with art, music, or any other recreational therapy? Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to a little bit earlier, is writing is really able to kind of bridge with a lot of other forms of art. So when we were first leading our workshop at Term and Halfway House, we actually had students wrote, and then we actually invited some recording artists to come to the halfway house, and students like turned some of their writing into songs and actually recorded it to music, which was really cool. One of the songs that was recorded actually came out of an I'm hungry for list. The student had written I'm hungry for the moment and then wrote this amazing song called The Moment. We also did writing related to music, where we would listen to a certain song and then write about all the feelings that each person had about that song. And then I was a DJ on co-op radio at the time, and so we would have students record the writing about certain music, and then use that to introduce a song on the radio. And that was really cool and really powerful. But yeah, I mean, art therapy is just a specific field, and of course, an area where you have to get a separate degree in order to be an art therapist. But I think writing can overlap with so many different types of art. Also, visual art, and visual journals is another type of journaling where you just kind of like doodle and, perhaps write for a little bit, but then also draw to express whatever emotions you're feeling. So I think there's a lot of possible ways that you could combine journaling with other art forms. And again, I invite you to reach out to Austin Batcave and we can brainstorm some ideas together.
We have a lot of questions today. This is awesome. Okay, so a couple of other questions that came in were, how do you get involved, and could you post the books all on the reference list? So we will post the books because we'll have this available online. And I believe you may have talked a little bit about how to get involved, but would you like to give one more shout out?
Yeah. So yeah, if you, you're welcome to email me and I think I can just, yeah, here's my contact information again.
Perfect.
You can email me at heather@austinbatcave.org or visit our website and take a look at our youth programs. There's a way to sign up as a volunteer on our website. You can also check out our adult workshops. And then, yeah, we will be, we have an internship for master's students that will be opening up again this fall. So if you're a current student and you're interested in that internship, just talk to your professors. It's a first field internship. And that intern will be leading therapeutic journaling groups in partnership with local schools, and hopefully if the Giddings State School opens up again to outside visitors post pandemic, then we'll be working with that facility again as well. So yeah, so excited to work with more social work students, and yeah, thank you for all the great questions here. I hope I was able to answer them enough, but if any of the topics you brought up you want to talk more about, please feel free to stay in touch. And if I'm not the right expert to answer it, I can connect you to other AVC staff members or other people, other writers that I know. So just, yeah, thank you all so much for being here and for listening. And yeah, I hope to meet all of you out in the community.
Thank you, Heather. I just want to say again, we're so proud of you at the Steve Hicks School of Social Work, and it's not easy to get a job in academic affairs. It's nothing like what you're doing now, but it does highlight that you are definitely one of our cream of the crop students, and now a wonderful alum. And just thank you so much for giving back to the school through this information. And I'm sure it's going to be downloaded a lot of times once we get it up on the list. So thank you.
Well, hope all of you have a great rainy afternoon. Thank you,
All
Jennifer,
right, so
for everything.
you bet. This is our, we have one more impact hour coming up next week. And Sarah, I'm going to ask you if you can talk a little bit about what we have coming up next week.
Yeah, so next week we have our last impact hour of this spring semester, and it's with Dr. Martel Teasley, who is actually the Dean of Social Work at the University of Utah. And he's done a lot of really amazing work on educational equity and social workers' sort of role in educational equity work. Social workers work in schools. So super inspiring talk, I'm sure, as well. And we would love for y'all to join us. That'll be same time next week. And we also, for the students that are online, we're kicking off our job search workshop. We're doing a series of workshops that are designed to help support y'all as the semester wraps and people are graduating and heading out into the workplace. We're going to do a whole series, everything from what are the best strategies to launch your job search, to tips for interviewing, to strategies for avoiding burnout and self-care, and even salary negotiation. So there's a real wide range of workshops that we'll be hosting, and we hope that y'all can join us for the ones that are helpful there too. So if you have questions about any of that, you can always just email us at dccs@austin.utexas.edu and check us out we have our website too. So but thank you again, Heather. This was such an awesome talk. I had my journal out while following along. So it was really, really inspiring to hear what beautiful work you're doing. And we really do appreciate you.
Wow, that's so amazing. Well, thank you again so much, Jennifer and Sarah, for everything. And I love that you had your journals here. That's so perfect. I actually journaled.
Valeria has hers out too.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I actually wrote a little bit myself right before this presentation because I was feeling really nervous, and I was like, and it helped. And I was like, okay, good.
Awesome.
I just had to use my own tool. But yeah, thank you so much for hosting this and for all the work you're doing to support social workers who have graduated and current students. And yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye everybody.
Bye.